Hi, I'm Milesy, and I'm here with Sophie again this week.
Hi.
There she is. If I sound tired, it's because I am. I just woke up. And this is actually the second time we have recorded this week. The first time, Windows 10 just decided to go be garbage. And it does this thing where every now and then it will just randomly shut off all of my USB ports. And when it does that, it corrupts the recording, and I can't get it back. So I went onto Reddit, and some helpful people showed me a way that I could still record the way that I like to and avoid that happening, even if Windows does shut off all of my USB ports, which it probably will. So, yeah, that was fun. We were so angry we just left last time.
Yeah. I was just like, no, I have other things to do tonight, sorry. I have to leave.
I think if we'd done it again anyway, it would have just been all of the salt.
Yeah.
And
it would have just been like an hour of us slagging off technology.
Yeah, because... And then we would have had nothing to talk about, but we have things to talk about now, in theory.
Yeah.
We'll see. But no, I'm tired because I am getting ready to go to Portland. By the time you guys see this, I will have actually already gone to Portland and come back. But we're recording this super way in advance just to give me time to actually put this out on time. But, so Ryan usually these days sleeps out in the spare room, or not in the spare room, in the spare bed, which is in the living room. Mostly just because his work schedule is such crap that he'd either be getting up and going to work while I'm still asleep, or coming home when I've already gone to bed and he doesn't want to wake me up, so he goes out there, and half the time he'll just sleep out there anyway. And I've gotten kind of used to that because I have shoulder problems, and I have to, like, sleep in a particular way, except when he wants to come sleep back there with me, he needs to be leeched onto me, like, all wrapped around me like an octopus. So I don't sleep very well. No.
It's because he loves you.
No, it's because he needs to take up the entire fucking bed.
Oh, yeah, no, you should try sharing it with him and the cat. Honestly, most nights I sleep, like, with one leg wrapped around my neck.
Yeah, no, well, we used to do that with Ryan and two Maine Coons, so...
Yeah.
Like, it's funny, I couldn't figure out why I was always so goddamn tired all the time. I think that's why, since he started sleeping out in the living room, I've been feeling a lot better and having more energy, because I'm actually able to sleep.
Yay.
Because I usually wake up around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and Sophie texted me at, like, 8:45, and I just ignored it for, like, 15 minutes, and then looked at it, and was like, fuck, that's right, we're recording. So I'm up, like, an hour and a half later than I'm usually up, because I didn't sleep last night.
No, that's fair. I also did not sleep well last night, but that's because I went to see the movie It. And it gave me nightmares. Which is weird. I never really considered myself particularly a wuss in that direction. But it was just that thing where you can't wake up enough to break the cycle of going back into the same nightmare, essentially. So yeah, I had, like, my family all came over today. And I was just like, I had to drag my ass out of bed and sort myself out, so...
So I used to get them all the time. Like, just, I would have nightmares easily 2 or 3 times a week. I don't anymore. And I've recently figured out that I get them when I'm exhausted, which, hey, we figured out what the problem with that was.
Yeah.
And I've been super exhausted all week. So, like, not last night, but the night before... I can't even really remember what it was, other than, like, I was trapped in this house and wasn't allowed to leave.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And that's what all of my nightmares wind up being, like, just really kind of enforced helplessness.
Yeah.
Because that's something that bothers me in my real life. And it's not very fun. Why is this doing something weird?
I think it's like, I think that's quite a visceral fear. Like, especially for women, the idea that, like, you couldn't do anything for yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's one that scares me quite a lot. Like the idea of being forced to do something that I didn't want to do, because, like, I had no choice. Like, the idea of that pressure weighing down on you is quite scary, I think.
So yeah, all of my really, really horrible bad dreams are the ones where I'm either trapped somewhere or I am not able to make my own decisions.
Yeah.
And
I think it's quite an interesting thing. There's a story about it, or along that thing called the Yellow... No, I'm going to get this wrong. It's either the Yellow Room or the Yellow Wallpaper. And it is by someone... One moment. I'll put down my name and find out.
Okay.
It's by someone, and what it's about is about this woman who gets married. And she finds out that her... and her husband is like, you're ill? Or she is ill? And she's like living in this room with yellow wallpaper. And she's just trapped there. And she's just trapped there, and she's just trapped there, and she's just trapped there. And anyway, she goes mad.
I would too.
As they do. And it ends badly, as they do. It's called The Yellow Wallpaper, and it's by Charlotte Perkins Gilman.
Huh.
And it is so good. Like, it is genuinely one of the most creepy short stories I've ever read. And I've read a lot of creepy short stories. Yeah, she gets moved to an old mansion in the country, and she's forbidden from working and encouraged to eat well with plenty of exercise and air, so that she can get rid of her nervous depression and a slight hysterical tendency. But in the end, she just ends up staying in bed all the time, and she gets really sort of like overwrought and like really obsessed with the wallpaper because it's like this really weird shade of yellow. I mean, she should just got to paint a decorator in, really, but she doesn't. So she just sort of goes mad, but in a really, like, I don't know, striking way. I don't want to ruin it. I think people should go into it. Like, ideally, you go into it knowing even less about it than that, because I came across it by accident. I got recommended it from one of my various earnest feminist readings. But it's so good. Like, it's a really good story.
It does sound good. If I can find a link for it, I'll put it down below.
Yeah, I'll see if I can dig one out. It's definitely worth a read. But yeah, that's very much about, like, being held captive, and a lot of second wave feminist books are about captivity as well, and even third wave feminist books by people like Sarah Waters, who wrote Fingersmith. She talks about women being trapped a lot, and who else? I think Jane Austen as well wrote about it a bit. Like, there's that, and of course Virginia Woolf wrote A Room of One's Own, which I've actually never read because I'm not a good feminist. So anyway,
yeah, it's
enough
just
about that. Oh,
you have
it's mildly interesting. Moderately interesting.
Moderately.
I have an update on the cat butt situation.
Oh, jeez.
So, I watched The Cat Returns, which is a Japanese movie from Studio Ghibli, actually. And it's all cats, and there are no cat butts in that.
No.
Which, I don't know. I mean, Studio Ghibli made a movie about tanuki, which are like these raccoon dogs that have like enormous inflating ball sacks that they use for tricks. Like, and that's fine, but apparently buttholes are just one hole too far.
Yeah.
And I also watched Shrek 2, and Puss in Boots doesn't have a butthole either, which is weird because they make a joke about him licking his butthole in the movie. Like, they have a shot of him in that very sort of, like, one leg in the ash.
I'm pretty sure the reason they don't show it is because it would probably make the movie, like, rated R or PG-13, and what the hell did I just do?
But doesn't make any sense. Like, that literally makes no sense. It's a cat.
So? Like,
cats aren't sexy. Unless they're Halle Berry, I guess. But even then, not particularly. So, yeah, well, that's what I have to say about that.
Well, it's funny because I watched this Disney animator, or this former Disney animator called Aaron Blaze on YouTube. And, yeah, his channel is a mixture of speed paints, tutorials, and just him going through his old Disney animations. He worked on Beauty and the Beast, Mulan, Brother Bear, both of them, I think. Pretty much a lot of the movies that had to do with animals in, like, the 90s, he worked on them. I think he did Raja in Aladdin.
Also doesn't have a butthole.
Nope.
That I remember.
But it was kind of funny because he painted this lion once. And it wasn't like a Disney drawing. It was a proper, actual digital painting. And it was this lion just kind of resting on a rock. And he drew the lion's balls. And everyone was just freaking out because I see that lion's balls, ooh. And it's like, well, yeah, this isn't a Disney thing. This is an actual animal study that he painted of a male lion. There's a difference there.
But equally, I don't understand why this is a problem. Because in theory, the idea is that it's inappropriate for small children to see anyone's sex organs. That's fair, I understand that. Probably shouldn't be like waving willies in your 5-year-old face. But what I don't get is how this extends to animals. Like, animals aren't supposed to be sexy, they're just animals, and most children will have come into a contact with an animal, and, like, animals are naked in real life. They've probably seen a cat butthole.
Well, have you ever read the comic The Boys?
No.
The dog in that comic has drawn genitals, and it is revolting. So, that's probably why.
Why is it revolting? I mean, apart from the fact that dog genitals are gross.
That's why. Because every time the dog is in frame, they make a point to show off his balls or his dick, basically.
Mm.
So,
see, that's weird. That's weird in the other direction. I would also like to point out that I was listening to last week's podcast, and a few moments there, I thought I came off as quite racist. I'm not a racist. I occasionally phrase things poorly.
Maybe
I think I said something. Well, okay, so I think I said something like Hades is funny because he's Jewish. The humor is not like I think Jewish people are inherently funny. I think that it's funny that a Greek god is being depicted as Jewish, and therefore, in theory, believes in the Judeo-Christian god, or the Abrahamic god. I thought that was quite funny, in a sort of, what the fuck, you've got this, the whole Hercules movie is like quite a bowdlerized or a flanderized version of the Herculean myth anyway, but I thought that was a particularly nice touch. So it wasn't just I'm a racist.
My favorite, there are 2 points in Hercules, actually, which goes back to your point earlier, that I just love to death. And one of them is when Pain and Panic are the little kid, or are the little kids talking about how someone's trapped, and someone says, quick, someone call IXII. And as a kid, I never understood what the hell that meant. And then there's another one where Meg's being tormented by the Minotaur, and Hercules goes, "Excuse me, my good sir," because he's looking down to check his junk.
See, I do feel like the centaur, and that if he'd had like a big old swinging horse stick, that might have been a tad
A
inappropriate.
little bit.
But then centaurs do have a habit of raping human women, so it's sort of a different context, I think. I mean, do you think it's like a sort of a humanity thing? So, like, the more like a human you make your animal, the less likely you are to be like, it just has a butt.
Maybe, I don't know.
Like,
Because like I said last time, in The Secret Life of Pets, they animated their buttholes. And that was all I could look at through the entire fucking movie. I was so distracted by everything having a big pink butthole.
but, I mean, cats do have big pink buttholes.
But they were so...
They
But usually they're covered in fur.
Too pink.
But usually they're covered in fur.
Not that covered in fur. I mean, I don't think my cat has a particular choice about whether she shows me her butthole or not. She just does it sometimes. Like, I don't think it's like she's like, I'm just going to show the human my butt to show her exactly the depth of my loathing. It's just like, I just have to go away and balance with my tail in the air. Anyway, I feel like we're going down a rabbit hole with this discussion.
Yeah, I think so,
I'm
too.
gonna try not to update people about whether I see cat buttholes or not.
Thank you. You freaking weirdo.
Or whatever. Well, it's interesting in a sort of what the fuck kind of a way.
Yeah.
The weird way that things get sexualized, essentially, is very odd to me. Like, so, spoilers. No spoilers. I don't know. I went to see It, the movie, and it's got a child actor in it, a female child actor in it, and I was almost a little bit uncomfortable. She was very like, there was a touch of the Lolita about it. And I'm not very uncomfortable, just uncomfortable enough to be like, you're trying to frame this so it's not weird, but it's weird.
Well,
you know?
So I haven't seen the new movie.
Yeah.
I have read the book, and I grew up on the old miniseries. That was, when I was 6, 7 years old, the original miniseries was one of our put it in the VCR and shut up movies, which might explain something about me. But... yeah, like Beverly's whole story was so awkward just because of the situation of how she grew up, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who is going into the new movie fresh, because some people like to do that, and, you know, that's cool. Do that, so I'm not going to spoil it, but yeah, just kind of in vague senses, the circumstances of how she grows up have put her in this just really awkward, horrific position. And the book goes into that quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
Which really got left out of the miniseries, aside from that one scene that you were talking about earlier before we were recording.
Yeah. And it's something that largely... there's a lot of what was in the book. A lot of the book goes to great detail to great depth, I think, to make you feel uncomfortable, to make you already a little bit upset and scared.
Yeah.
So that when they get onto the more sort of clown thing, you're more likely to react to it. And they cut a lot of that out of the film, I think, for time. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if the current political climate had something to do with it, which is a shame.
It wasn't in the original miniseries. I don't know if it's in the new one, but that fucking fridge scene horrified me as a kid. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't remember.
So, I don't know if this is in the movie. This may be spoilers, but it's in a book that was written, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But there's this scene in the book where Henry Bowers, starts, like, finding dogs and neighborhood pets, and he found this abandoned refrigerator just kind of out there
Oh, yeah.
What do they call that little area? The Barrens. It's out there in the Barrens. And so he would, like, put these dogs and shit into the refrigerator and just would like to come in and check on them every now and then and, you know, see if they're dead. And at one point, one of the dogs escaped, which really pissed him off. And then he realized that, you know, hey, dogs ain't doing it for me. I'm going to find a little boy and shove the little boy in the refrigerator. And this was the ones that this took place in the 50s. So these weren't the refrigerators that, you know, if your bag of peas is on the shelf wrong, the door will flip open. These locked. So, you know, he's going to put this little kid in the refrigerator, except the refrigerator, like, fucking explodes with these horrible death maggots or some shit and eats him or something. Or maybe it wasn't Bowers then, it was one of his friends.
It might have been one of his friends. It wasn't... So, you'll be pleased to know that that is not in the movie.
Good. Because it might be in the second part. Who knows?
It might be in the second part. We don't know. Because the second part is going to be... So, I feel like this is fairly wide knowledge. The first movie is is telling what they did when they were kids, and then the second movie will be what they do as adults.
Yeah,
so I don't know if there'll be more flashbacks. But yeah, and for that, I think the movie suffers a little bit from losing quite a lot of the real world context. It concentrates very much on the sort of the paranormal side of it, which Dinming and I got to a point in the movie where it was like part of me just went, I'm done. This is just funny now.
Well, because the whole reason that it came about was that there was an actual story about this man who was killed in front of his boyfriend. And Stephen King read that news story and it terrified him. And that is one thing I really appreciate about Stephen King is that he, you know, writes some of the most viscerally disgusting and terrifying horror out there, and yet he reads a news article and says that's fucking terrifying. And that news article just kind of inspired this entire horrible book.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stephen King has always had a knack, like, I think after a while he does sort of fall into he's a writer and he broke his leg, or he broke his leg and now he is being a creative, and then he is haunted. Like, there is a lot of that sort of thing, in my opinion, in some of his, like, sort of, I guess, the 90s?
Yeah.
Maybe? Funnily enough, after he got hit by a car. And I think he's one of these people who writes what he knows. And I think a lot of his, like, inspiration sort of thing, but I think it means that he's just, like, a better writer for it, because he has this, like, it's almost like, well, what I'm dealing with is too fucked up to think about.
Well, he also got off the coke, so...
Yeah, and that probably helped. But, or, like, I can't make sense of what this person has done to another person, so I'm going to pretend that, like, there's a scary clown, or I'm going to pretend that, like, they're being haunted by a lady who got lynched in the 20s or something. And yeah, they just make for really good horror. He's got a really good idea of what makes humans disgusting. My favourite book by him is The Stand. Like, it's a version of 1980s or the 1970s? Don't know.
I can't remember.
But there's a super flu, and it wipes out like 99% of humanity. And then they're trying to rebuild their lives out of, like, the end of the world. And there's this whole fight with good and evil, and it's just like, it's such a solid book, like, really good from beginning to end. I think he suffers from not being edited enough. So if you read the original version of The Stand, if you get hold of an old edition, which is only about 400 pages long, then that's a very sort of compact, very hard-hitting read. the longer version, the extended edition he did, was a bit more like rambling.
The one that weighs
and,
like 80 pounds.
Yeah, the one you could kill a man with, like, that's a bit more difficult.
I think my favorite one that he did was, it was actually 2 books. It was Desperation and the Regulators. And one of them, it was the same story. One of them was written by Stephen King, the other was written by Richard Bachman, and I can't remember which was which.
I think Desperation was Stephen King?
Yeah. But it was all... It was the exact same story, just in a totally different context.
Yeah.
Where, like, there was this evil... One of it happened in, like, this, like, kind of little pit stop town, and the other was just on this pleasant neighborhood street, where just something goes wrong, and suddenly evil, and fucking everybody's dying. And I haven't read it in probably 20 years. But just, that was when I first realized that, you know, you can tell the same story, and it can be exactly the same, but it can still be completely different and very fresh and interesting.
I think that's like, yeah, and I think when it comes to Stephen King especially, he's very much played with that idea to its fullest, if he's doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, if he's like, we're going to start off with the same situation, and then see what different ways we can take it. Because I think, I mean, I could be wrong here, because I haven't read them for ages, but he wrote The Dead Zone.
Yes.
And then he wrote 11 something 63? 11/22/63?
Yes. Yeah,
yeah. 09 60 something about the Kennedy.
Yeah,
Kennedy
it was
murder.
11/22/63. That's the date he died. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It's also my birthday, so I know this. Different year, but it's my birthday. I know this.
That's what you get. Man, that's depressing.
So I actually talked about this a little tiny bit in my September favorites video, which I don't know if you've seen that one yet, because it just went out for us yesterday. But for you guys, it went out about 2 weeks ago. But there's a little bit more time to actually talk about it, so I'm going to talk about it. I watched, there's something in my eye. I watched this documentary called Beware the Slender Man, which, did you hear about that whole thing?
Yes!
So
that was insane.
So yeah, and it's still kind of ongoing. They keep getting extensions and all this other crap, which they shouldn't be getting, but whatever. I don't run the justice system.
But it must be such a fucking nightmare to know how to charge people who are as young as those guys.
But the thing is that the 2 girls that committed the crime came from 2 vastly different families. And it was so fascinating to watch this, because one of the girls came from the kind of family where your door is always open, and we monitor everything that you watch, and he was, the dad was saying that we weren't thrilled about the fact that she was into these stories online, but we didn't think they were very harmful and all that stuff, and now he's kind of blaming those stories anyway, and he's in so much denial. He seems to think that everything is going to be over next week, and his daughter is coming home, and that this was all just a big misunderstanding, and, like, he can't quite accept the fact that his daughter tried to kill someone in a vicious, brutal way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, he just can't accept this. And then the other girl, they mostly talked to her mom. It was very much the opposite. She believed that her daughter was her own person, and that, she could have private things. And how, even from a young age, she always knew that the daughter was, like, a little bit different, because the first time she showed her Bambi, she was prepared for that little bit of drama that happens where you have to say, no, it's okay, everything's gonna be fine. Instead, when Bambi's mother died, she goes, run, Bambi, save yourself, which is kind of odd for a young child, but okay, at the time, it's not something you think about. And she was just always just kind of a little weird and different, and that's okay. Kids can be weird and different. And then this happened, and instead of saying that, oh no, everything's going to be all right, the response was, no, everything is clearly not all right, and we should have been more open and honest because Dad has schizophrenia, and maybe going away for a while or a long time or however long it takes is absolutely what she needs.
Yeah.
And it was just really interesting to see a very practical look at it from one set of parents and just complete, utter denial of our daughter did nothing wrong from the other side.
Yeah, it's, I think, especially with the right, like, especially since it's becoming a lot more common for children to have more private, I think kids, especially today, have much more of a sense of privacy than kids my age, or maybe even your age, would have, because they have their own phones.
Yeah.
And it was a thing in the UK for a little bit, because we had these, there were 3 girls, I think? Internet, tell me if I'm wrong. 3 girls who ran away from home to go and be, they were called and oppressed jihadi brides. I don't know what that actually means. All I know is that they ran away to join ISIS.
Vaguely remember this?
Oh, yeah, no, it was a big deal, because they saved the money up, they bought the tickets, they went, all without their parents knowing. And the parents were like, this is because they were allowed access to the internet. The school wasn't trying hard enough to stop them from becoming radicalized.
It's not the school's job.
And it's like, but I think it's not almost like, unless your kids were going to a Muslim school in the same way that you might go to a Catholic school.
Which I'm sure they exist somewhere.
I think they exist in the UK, I'm not sure. Internet, tell me if I'm wrong. Just come at me, bro, for every troll. So, like, I think there is a duty within the community to make sure that, like, children are not in a situation where they feel so alienated that some stranger on the internet is, here, I have an answer to all your problems, and they're like, that sounds amazing. When you're 14, being 14 is shit. It's so appalling.
Oh my god, it is.
It's so bad. Why would you do it? Like, I don't understand people who say being a teenager is the best years of your life, because I would never go back for, like...
You couldn't pay me to go back.
It'd have to be such a large sum of money if I was going to go back. Such a large sum of money. We're talking, like, richer than God, big gold castle type of money, you know? I want to be able to look down on Donald Trump as, like, a commoner. That's how rich I would have to be.
Yeah. Pretty much.
And I think it's not talked about enough in some ways. Like, the idea that, like, people will go online and be told, this is the answer to the problem. If you come with us and live your life this way, you will be better. And it is the parents' responsibility, but to ensure that your kids aren't feeling alienated. Like, or at least if they're feeling alienated, then they're kept in the sort of the herd for long enough to feel alienated with other people who feel alienated, you know? Like, it's such a weird thought. Like, from my point of view, when I was a kid, internet was dial-up, and we had AOL, and I literally could not work out how to get out, like, the AOL part of the internet for ages. I didn't even realise that the internet existed outside of, like, Google until someone told me about 4chan.
Oh, Jesus.
And
what an introduction to the internet.
Oh, yeah, no, I was on 4chan back in the day as well, like...
See, I was on 7chan, because 7 is greater than 4.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
That might have been a little bit before my time. I think I hit 4chan around the time of all the Habbo raids.
Well, because this was around... This was when we lived in California.
Oh, I didn't know you... Yeah, so this was before I knew you.
Yeah.
So, the Habbo raids were in 2005?
Now, that was a little bit before then, when I got on 7
Oh,
Jam.
maybe later than
know.
that. But yeah, tell me if I'm wrong, internet. So the Habbo I was on there for the Habbo raids, although I didn't get involved because I must have been living in New Zealand by that time, so I wasn't awake at the right time to be in the Habbo raids. How lame is that? And I was there for, like, essentially the birth of Anonymous.
Oh, jeez.
And then I found LiveJournal, and then I started getting into fandom again. I sometimes, like, you know when you're like, what could have been, when you're, like, thinking about the alternate realities? I always wonder what would have happened if I'd stuck it out in the Pirates of the Caribbean fandom in 2003. Like, how different my life would have been if I got in. Because I bet that's, like, I think there would have been a natural progression to the Harry Potter fandom.
Probably.
Which is the first fandom that was, like, really on the internet. I mean, it's a fascinating history, really, because the Harry Potter fandom sort of grew up with the internet. So they were all sort of there for all the, like, the birthing of, like, LiveJournal, for example. Like, it all grew up with that shit.
So...
And it was when, like, no one lied on the internet. So when people, like, this is how we get sued. So when people like Cassandra Clare came on board and started, like, asking people for money, come at me, Cassandra Clare. I'll take you and your fucking rip-off fucking fiction.
Oh, Cassie Clare.
Yeah. Yeah, back in the day. It never really occurred to anyone that anyone would lie on the internet like that.
So, I think my first proper online fandom, because I didn't really understand fandom when I was younger, like, I would go on GeoCities, and I knew that Yahoo groups were a thing, but we had AOL, and we lived out in the mountains, and the internet sucked.
Yeah.
So I didn't really do a whole lot of interneting until after I got married and moved to California. Because, say what you will about Fort Irwin, it's a hole. I hated it. The internet was great. So, I spent all of my time on the internet. But, what wound up happening was that, my first major online fandom was actually Mythbusters. I'm not looking at me.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I know, right? So that was my first major online fandom, and it was like my first introduction to what RPF was. So it was like, this is fun. There are two vastly different sides of this fandom that are really at war with one another. I don't know which side to be on, because this side's kind of creepy, and this side's kind of militant. For lack of a better word.
Yeah.
But there was an IRC group that I hung out with a lot, and there were a couple of Yahoo groups that I hung out on. And that was when I went to my first fan convention. We had MythCon. And it was a lot of fun. I went to San Francisco to meet up with these people I'd never met in my life. Because it was all set up by the fans. It wasn't like, how conventions are these days. It was 12 of us. And because we were the big fan group, we got the Mythbusters. All of them except for Jamie Heineman, who had obligations with his wife. And, cool, go hang out with your wife. But we had pretty much all of them, and I remember being really disappointed, because when we had the big fan dinner, they had set it up to where every table would get to sit with a Mythbuster, and I really wanted to sit at Adam's table, and I got on Adam's table. And then he spent the entire dinner over at another table just talking with his friends, and didn't actually sit with us, and that was the first moment that I realized aw man, don't ever meet your heroes.
Yeah. I mean, the closest, yeah, I mean, by the time I sort of got properly back into the internet, cons were starting to come up in a big way, I think. Like, they suddenly had, uh, I don't know, backing, I guess? Like,
Yeah.
people were suddenly going to cons. Cons were a thing. Like, it wasn't just like, you know, someone who played the Seventh Borg in one episode of Star Trek. It would be, like, real, like,
Yeah.
actual stars, like, people you'd heard of. Sorry, I've just moved my microphone.
And then,
So,
so yeah, that was really cool. Kind of disappointing, but what made up for it was that the next day they had their gun expert, Alan Normandy. And we got to go to his house, and he showed us all of his private, personal guns that he used, and then he took us to the police station to teach us how to shoot. So
that would
was
never
fun.
happen nowadays.
Yeah, no,
That
that
shows you how
wouldn't.
much things have changed. Like,
Yeah,
it's gone from like, oh yeah, let's hang out with, we'll hang out with our fans, to get them as far the fuck away from me.
but
as you
I
can.
hope I still have it. It's probably somewhere. I have this picture. I should frame it and hang it up. Of, yeah, Alan Normandy of the Mythbusters giving me this big old sloppy wet kiss on the cheek.
Aww.
And yeah,
Yeah.
that's the kind of convention that would not happen these days.
No. I think nowadays it's all a lot more controlled because, I mean, especially with these little babby fans, bless them.
Rex Patel.
Sorry if you're a babby fan and you're not a lunatic, but
Rex
Jesus
Patel
Christ.
ruined it for you. And others
Yeah.
before her, but you know.
Oh yeah, definitely others before her.
But she's the big name that most people today know.
Yeah, like, if you were in the show at fandom in 2008, you know Rex Patel.
Yeah.
God bless her crazy heart. I wonder what happened to her.
I don't know, probably in jail.
We're laughing, but it might be true. That's awkward.
Yeah.
Mm.
But, and then before that, it wasn't really a proper online fandom. It was more of those, it happened online, but it all happened on email, I was really into Penn and Teller.
Oh yeah.
And a few times we would, you know, we would, this was so long ago that it was happening all on email, but we were sending copies of VHSs, and we were just learning how to copy DVDs, which is how early in internet fandom that was.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Jesus.
So, yeah.
You should feel old. By the time I got into fandom, all that had passed. Like, we could download shit.
But what this means is that I pretty much have still, because I just can't bear to get rid of them, and they are genuinely fun to watch even now. I pretty much have every single TV appearance Penn and Teller have ever made. I've since digitized it all. I have everything. I have all their movies, all of their guest appearances on Letterman, all of their TV specials.
I want to see if I can get hold of Humbug on, just Humbug. Like, no, what was it called? It wasn't called Humbug. It was called Bullshit.
Humbug was.
They called one of the episodes Humbug
Yeah.
because they did an episode about swearing. Is where I got that from, I think.
And apparently the airline version is called Bill Shot.
Bullshit.
Yeah, because it has to be censored for airlines. So a lot of things will have specific
Amazing.
airline
Do you think they're just
stuff.
Do you think they're just 2 minutes long? Because I'm pretty sure there was an episode of
He talked about it once, about how he was on a plane and he found it and it was called Bill Shot. And he's like, what's going to be left? And then he was surprised that it was called Bill Shot, but then it was completely intact.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, yeah, that was kind of my first proper experiences with fandom. And then I discovered Hot Fuzz, which was my first proper online fandom.
Yeah.
Where everything was on the internet. Everything was fun. And, yeah.
Yeah, so as I understand it I did quite a lot of reading for it for a bit because I had a vague notion that it would be amusing to do a PhD on the history of fandom. And it still might be. So you get the Harry Potter fandom, and the Harry Potter fandom is the first fandom that has proper, like, internet, like, live journal and shit. And that goes about as well as you can be expected. It starts out well and then all goes to shit, fair enough. But after that, every fandom had an internet pretty much straight away.
Yeah.
So...
You're not emailing people and sending them VHS tapes in the mail.
No, because you can just, you know, do it on YouTube.
Here's this thing.
Put it on a file share.
Keep vid it before YouTube deletes it.
Yeah.
I remember when Keep Vid first became a thing. And it was like that thing that you didn't mention in anywhere online because, oh no, the feds might come.
Yeah.
And it's And
yeah,
now I use it to download stock videos from YouTube if I need stock footage.
Yeah, I mean, the internet's changed so much.
It really
We're
has.
old.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sherlock was my first proper fandom. So I sort of got into Pirates of the Caribbean when I was younger. And then stopped fandom for ages. Almost got into the Doctor Who fandom.
Doctor Who fandom was terrifying.
Well, I would have got into it
dabbled for about a week.
I would have got into it about the revival. So when Christopher Eccleston was still doing it. That was when I was going to get into it, but we moved to New Zealand, so I didn't bother.
I started looking around David Tennant, and at that point it had already reached face-eating levels of crazy.
Yeah.
So I just, I was there for about a week. I joined all the communities. I left all the communities.
Yeah, I mean, I always find it interesting how quickly fandoms can get crazy. Like Sherlock,
Maudie Dearest.
Oh god, yeah.
That woman was crazy.
There was so many of them. Like, just these people who, I don't know what their deal was,
Icons
to be honest.
with antlers still kind of send this visceral hatred through me every time I see them online.
Yeah, I mean...
She has ruined antlers for me.
And then after that, I just didn't have the heart to get into any of the fandoms in a real proper way.
Yeah.
Like,
we both kind of tried Marvel, but Marvel was fucking insane.
Once again, the insanity levels were bigger than I would have liked. So for a little while, I got into the Next Generation. So Jesus,
yeah, I remember.
Sorry,
that.
I've just found this. Yeah, and that was fairly mad as well. I mean, fandom is a really good way for people to work out their fantasies. I don't have anything against that. In fact, I think that's a really positive thing. I think if you are young and trying to work out who you are, experimenting by presenting yourself with different identities on anonymous internet forums and writing about characters who have different identities is probably quite a healthy way to deal with it.
Yeah, I would agree.
But I'm really sorry to all those people, but it was really badly written. It was all appallingly written. And it was just sort of like...
If you weren't in that position where you weren't also going through that struggle and trying to figure it out, yeah, the fic was so weird. But, like, every now and then you would find something where it's like, hey, this is me. It didn't matter how bad it was. It was the best thing ever.
Yeah. And it's just something I often think back on, because, like, I just want to be like, but it's shit. But then, imagine being young and confused and wanting to find a niche for yourself.
Yeah.
I think that might be the thing. I mean, some of it was quite good fun. I went through quite an intense high school AU phase, because they generally were terrible, but they were quite good fun.
And then the ones that I really remember loving was those fics in between the first and second season when we had no idea what was going on.
Oh,
and everybody thought that was Reichenbach. So everybody was writing the end of the first season as Reichenbach. And then Reichenbach actually happened right around the time I noped out.
Yeah. No, that was about when I gave up on it as well, I think. Like, I mean, yeah, you get to a level of toxicity in a fandom where you can't deal with it anymore.
Oh,
Sorry.
man. So, that Stork Scissors. Stork
Yeah,
Scissors.
yeah.
So that video went up. And
Yeah.
thank you to everybody who watched and shared that thing. That was my my best performing video at release ever. So, that was cool. But,
Yeah.
holy crap, did you see some of the comments?
No.
I got these
crap.
not just on YouTube. I also got them on Facebook as well, where I, shared it around, because that's what I do. I got so many comments of people just saying how they can't believe these gorgeous, pretty stork scissors came from something as disgusting as childbirth.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, and it's like, do we tell them? Do they know where they came from?
I mean, to be fair though, childbirth is pretty gross.
But
Like,
I just imagine that these people immediately threw away their scissors just from how disgusted they were that they would have anything to do with childbirth, even through inspiration. Because it's not like your pair of scissors was used to deliver a baby.
well, assuming not. You never know, people. You never know.
Incidentally, one of my pairs of storks was used to remove stitches from my foot.
Oh, that's what ended up happening with that.
Yeah, so, I don't know if I've told this story on this channel, actually.
Maybe not.
So, back in February, I was here in my room, and I had some beer bottles on my desk, because I had been drinking a little bit, and I needed to clean it up. So, I was doing that, and I picked up one of the beer bottles, dropped it, and immediately stepped on it. And a piece of glass about this big, pretty damn big, wound up going through my foot.
Oh my
And to
God.
this day, I cannot feel the last 3 toes on my right foot. And my doctor said that if that didn't come back within 6 months, it probably wasn't ever going to. So, I have no feeling in my toes, probably forever. How fun. So, yeah, I wound up pretty much in the hospital. I had to call Ryan at work, and at that point, he didn't have a cell phone yet. He got rid of it just to save money, because before he had this job where he's at now, he was at a full-time job where he was actually working like 15 hours a week, so we really had to cut back on bills. And then he got this job, and everything is a lot better now. But, so I had to call his work at the office, and pretty much as calm as I could be after having this glass in my foot, which I freaked out and jerked my foot, and then the glass fell out and blood was everywhere.
Oh my God.
And luckily I was in my craft room, so I grabbed some fabric, stuffed it on my foot, wrapped it with some quilting fabric. So I wasn't completely hopeless, but I knew that, I needed to go to the hospital. This is bad. So I called him, and I, pretty much as calm as I could be, said, I need Ryan on the phone. Tell him his wife is having an emergency. And so he had to come home from work to take me to the hospital, which luckily is like 2 blocks that way. Our neighbor is the hospital where they took the survivors from Mount St. Helens in 1980. So,
Whoa.
yeah.
Cool.
So, if it were anything other than glass in the bottom of my foot, I could have walked myself there, no problem. It was glass in the bottom of my foot. So he had to come get me to drive me 2 blocks, because like hell are we paying for an ambulance for 2 blocks? So,
The country is insane.
I know, right? So, he had to come home, and then he gets me there, and he works at a nursing home, which is notoriously short-staffed, so he should not have taken even that amount of time off, because they did not have enough people on the floor. So he got me to the hospital, and he got me in line for the triage nurse, and he said, do you need me here, or can I go back to work and finish my shift? And at that point, I could take care of myself. I had my adult pants on, I was in pain, but I could take care of myself. So I said, yeah, go finish your shift, don't get your nursing home shut down for not having enough people on staff. Which we didn't realize how this looked from the outside, because what it looks like is this guy in scrubs dropping me off at the hospital and leaving. So I get up to the triage nurse, and she, you know, doing all the intake, and I told her what happened. And she, you know, asks, is there anybody with me? And I said, no, my husband had to go back to work. And I got all the questions of, you know, is everything all right at home and all that stuff. And we are probably in that file, and I'll tell you why after this. So I'm like, yeah, everything's fine. This was just stupidity. So, you know, I went and got my, got like 6 stitches in my foot, and I was texting Sophie the whole time, just kind of in tears, because, holy crap, it was not fun. And
I would have, if you told me you were crying, I would have called you. I don't know what I would have done, but I would have called you.
Well, because it was in the bottom of my foot, which meant it was nasty, and there was glass, and there was beer in it, and it was disgusting. So they couldn't wash it out without anesthetizing it. So they had to anesthetize it first, which was the worst pain I've ever had, and I have broken my back.
Yeah.
So they did that, but then they had to wash it out, which took all of the medicine out. So it was all gone by the time he did his stitches. So I pretty much had 6 stitches in the bottom of my foot with no anesthesia, and it was awful. And I like to say that I took it like a champ. I didn't, but I didn't kick anybody in the face, and the doctor was very kind. He was very sweet, and I was basically like on my side, hugging the rail on the side of the bed, screaming, while the doctor was just going as fast as he could. And then all of a sudden I hear, you're going to hate me, the stitch broke. And I just lost it. I was bawling. And he didn't even put as many in my foot as he should have, because I couldn't handle it, but it was good enough.
Why didn't he just give you more anesthetic?
Because I would have been there for another half hour.
Oh.
And, you know, that would have been another $500 or whatever. So, yeah.
Your country is mad. I don't get it. Why don't you just have universal healthcare so that people can go to the hospital and then just be treated properly instead of being given some weird fucking Victorian fucking
but yeah,
what the fuck?
And that's why Ryan took my stitches out, because we didn't want to go in to pay for something that he could do at home. So he went and got these scissors first, which, let me put them right here. These horrible, horrible things, these embroidery scissors, are sharp as fuck. I hate these scissors. These will ruin your fabric if you use them on your embroidery wrong. So he tried this, and I was so worried every time this sharp tip touched the bottom of my foot that I kept jerking my foot. And he was like, I'm going to fucking stab you. And so I'm like, you know what? Go into my sewing kit and grab my storks, because they've got a blunt tip. So he grabbed my little white stork scissors, and he took out my stitches with those.
Oh, God.
But, no, we're in a file. And I think every time I have to go to the hospital, or he has to go to the hospital with an unusual injury, we're going to get those questions. Because when we were in California, it was just his day off. So he was out in the living room playing Fight Night, which he's not allowed to play anymore because of what happened the last time he played Fight Night. And I didn't want to watch him get angry at this very poorly made game. So I went back into my room and was fiddling around with this bike that I had found on the side of the road, because on army bases, it is generally the rule that if you leave something on the sidewalk, it's not trash, it's free. Because you have to leave at a moment's notice, and you often can't take your stuff with you. So pretty much anything that you have at the army base has been owned by five other people before you. And it just kind of gets cycled around like that. If you leave it out, it's free, and the pile will be gone by the next morning. And in one of these free piles, I found a bicycle. And I was trying to take apart this bicycle and turn it into, like, just art or something. I was super bored. I hated California. And I couldn't get one of the wheels off because it was stuck on there. It didn't even really turn. It was horrible. And so I'm wrenching and wrenching and wrenching, and it finally came off and it whanged me in the face. And I'm like, okay, cool, that hurt, carrying on. And as I'm doing that, I hear Ryan out in the other room just screaming and swearing and all this shit, and then eventually he turns it off and I hear him go back to bed. And I'm like, what the hell is he going to bed at 3 in the afternoon for? And what he had done that I had not seen was that he got so angry that he turned and he punched the front of the couch. Because he wasn't on the couch, he was in his gaming chair. And he punched the couch, and he heard a crack, and he thought that he was so badass that he cracked the couch. He was not. He shattered this knuckle right here. This one. The ring finger knuckle. And he doesn't actually have that anymore. There's just a depression on his hand when he makes a fist now. Because of what he did. So he was kind of in shock. So that's why he went to bed. And he woke up a little bit later and he said, I think I broke my hand. I need to go to the hospital. So I'm like, okay, we'll go to the hospital. And I don't drive. But he wanted me to go with him anyway, just in case. Maybe he needed a ride home, because I can operate a car. I'm just super uncomfortable with it. So I was like, okay. So I went, and they signed him in, and then they wouldn't let me go see him. And I couldn't figure out why, so I'm like, fine. So I went out to the waiting room where Kill Bill was playing on, like, TBS. And you guys don't have TBS over there. I don't know if you guys even have an equivalent where... That's the TV station where they'll play movies and then they'll put ads every 15 minutes.
Yeah, that happens.
So your movie winds up being twice the length that it should be. So I watched both parts of Kill Bill on TBS. That's an important detail. That's how long they would not let me see my husband for. So, like, you know, the sun had gone down by that point, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm bored, I'm hungry, I want to go home. So I go up to the desk, and I'm like, it doesn't take this long to wrap a hand, does it? What's going on? And I just finally got so angry that I was almost shouting at this woman, and she finally let me go back there and see him, and the doctor was super uncomfortable with me being there, and I was just fucking angry. He wanted to go home, he was angry, it was not nice. So they finally wrapped his hand up, and at that point, it had been so long that he had to have one of those temporary casts put on so the swelling could go down, because they didn't wrap his hand in time. Because they were too busy, you know, fucking around. And so we were angry. We go home, and we got dinner on the way home, and then I go into the bathroom to, like, wash up, because I'd just spent all day in the hospital doing nothing, and I felt gross. And that's when I looked in the mirror, and I had an enormous black eye from the bicycle tire that had hit me in the face earlier that day. So it's like, as annoying as it was when I had the glass in my foot to be asked those questions, that was so much more preferable than being just shoved over here in a corner and ignored.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, ask the questions and I will tell you, no, this was stupidity. I do this all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's good they've got some checks in place. Like, probably better that you're moderately inconvenienced than, like,
yeah,
some other poor woman or man, gets, like, murdered by their abusive spouse when it could have been, like, avoided, you know?
But, like, yeah, and the fact that this is an army base that is known for having a high divorce rate, and they just kind of sat there and I don't know what they were trying to do, but they could have, asked what happened. They could have, taken me aside.
Yeah, that's weird that they just sort of kept you hanging out.
Yeah, and then it got to the point where I was so angry because I didn't know what the hell was going on, which probably made it look worse, but at the same time, fucking tell me.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've probably got one of those files that just travels around with us everywhere.
I don't have one of those files yet. Yay!
Yeah, you don't want one.
No. Well, it turns out, so I've got a bit of a heart thing. And I think I've told, 3 different doctors about that in the UK, and I still don't think it's stuck to my file. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to have to tell more doctors about it before I die.
Hey, I've got a heart thing. This is important. Remember it.
Well, it's just like, I've got a heart thing, they fixed it, but it could still, you know, make anything you guys want to do a bit more difficult. I don't know. I'm telling you so you don't accidentally murder me. That would be fine.
Okay, well, all of my USB just shut off again, but hopefully, here's fingers crossed, that the files didn't get completely corrupted, but, you know, just in case, I think we're going to end it here.
Yeah.
I don't know where we cut off. It might have cut off mid-conversation. We'll see. I just got all of the ding-da-ding in my ear there all of a sudden of my USB.
Well, it's all good. We can always record this for the 3rd time, but not right away. We'll have to do it when I've got some more interesting things to talk about.
Well, I'm leaving tomorrow, and this is coming up the day after I get home, so it's this or nothing.
You lucky people, yeah.
I know. Oh my god, I'm so tired. So I'm gonna go. I have like 8,000 videos to edit today anyway, and 8,000 orders to package, and all this other fun stuff, so... Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it, just to make sure that this is actually working. Yay! Okay. Anything parting to say, Sophie?
If you put soap in the microwave, it bubbles up.
Okay. So I guess we're gonna leave with that. Thank you guys so much for joining us here. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing, all that fun stuff. Remember, don't eat soap, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye!